So I'm curious, how did you find your way to this space and say I'm going to put out a magazine and focus on this particular type of art?
Yeah, it actually goes back to the mid teens with the sad puppies and the OSR movement. You know, um, Cirsova actually started out as a Dungeons and Dragons blog that originally was focused on a setting, but then moved more towards mechanics. But one of our friends, Jeffro Johnson, was at the time doing a deep dive on Appendix N, which is the list at the back of the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Master Guide of the specific authors and works of fiction that inspired the game. And so he's doing a deep dive on this. I'm following kind of what he's doing. And I also end up finding this cache of pulp magazines at a flea market, and I know what names I need to be looking out for now. And so I start getting into that and checking those out and just looking at all this old pulp fiction, just being blown away by it. It's so different from even the fantasy stuff I kind of grew up reading, because I kind of grew up on like the Dragonlance era and Shannara stuff. And yeah, and, you know, I got to thinking, well, surely there's people out there who's still writing stuff like this today, but do they have any places to publish it? And that the thing that you always kept hearing was like the magazines these days are all just publishing garbage, experimental fiction and just weird, random, boring, thinky stories and social issues stories. And so my thought was if I created a magazine and an outlet for authors who wrote the kind of fiction that I liked, and also I paid good money for it, then I would be able to encourage it and, have it all in one place, easy for me to read.
It's always selfishness, for the record.
Yeah,
Like, I started this because I wanted more of the stuff I want to read.
exactly.
If I could help them afford to write the stuff, then I get more stuff.
Yeah. So in late 2015, I put out a submission call, managed to get enough fiction to put out one issue of a magazine, and I did a little mini Kickstarter for it. It didn't come anywhere close to paying out what I was paying to get it done, but we came out with our first issue. People were pretty impressed by it, and we put out another submission call, and we ended up getting something like 5 or 6 times as many stories this time, and enough to actually fill up 3 issues worth of content. And right there, bam, we had a quarterly magazine for 2016. And we've, with a few exceptions, 2017 we did two issues just to like get a little break and figure some things out. We did 3 issues in 2019 and 5 issues in 2020. But other than that, every year we've been quarterly.
Nice. Now, I'm curious. Do you come from a background in which naturally publishing is a thing that you do, and it was just a natural transfer of skills, or you, like a lot of other people, not at all? Just, hey, I'm going to jump into this industry I know very little about because I like the stuff that it puts out.
Well, it's one of those weird cases where I kind of I'm self-taught, but it still runs in the family. My grandfather was an editor for Legal Review and other things like back when he was in his career, and but it just sort of happened at a time when there were a lot of tools available. It was really easy to start doing serious self indie publishing stuff. Now, before I launched the magazine, I actually did do a dry run on a choose your own adventure novel that I wrote just to, figure out how to get something formatted and how to use one of the print on demand services like Lulu or something. And, that turned out really nice, I thought. And I'm like, okay, I know how to do this. I know how to use InDesign to make covers. I know how to get everything formatted. And I know how to get the submissions out there. And it just kind of took off from there. I mean, I've still been kind of learning as I go, and I've had some ups and downs working with different printers and distributors over the years.
Well, and I think that story goes for everybody out there because
Yeah.
they're always changing up how they do things to try and be better or cheaper at what they do based on the market.
Yeah, like when we first got started, we were using Create Space for printing the magazine, and we were able to fulfill Kickstarters using Create Space because um, you could print up saleable copies before it went live. Now the way that Amazon KDP works after they bought Create Space, you cannot print a saleable copy of a book without it already being available for sale on Amazon.com. And so you can't really do a Kickstarter like that because you don't want the people who pre-ordered your book through Kickstarter to be getting them later than the people who just go on to Amazon day one and buy it. So we've had to figure out some workarounds with that, and we use much more expensive printers to make sure people get their books on time for the Kickstarters. But we these days we just dump the magazine onto Amazon. People can buy it as soon as it's out. We don't even run Kickstarters for it anymore.
Okay, well, that's interesting.